know about you, but I grew up hearing Jimi Hendrix is the greatest guitarist of all time. And so when I finally got around to checking him out, I was kind of underwhelmed. But there's one solo on this album here that, after learning it, I finally got it. Hendrix sits alone at the top of Guitar God Mountain, and let me tell you why the solo on track 17 proves it. Now, if you were a guitar player in 1967, you would remember when this album came out. The thing is, for the rest of us, that's kind of ancient history. I mean, Are You Experienced came out almost 60 years ago, and that's a long time. And to the average guitar player in 2024, your first time listening to Jimi Hendrix's debut album might be a bit like mine, underwhelming. So the thing about listening to records decades after they came out is you completely miss the historical context. You might listen to this and say, I don't get what the big deal is. It's the same style as John Mayer, Stevie Ray Vaughan, John Frusciante. But the thing you gotta remember is the sound of the electric guitar from 1967 onwards is shaped by this album. Pretty much all of us share a common musical ancestor in Jimi Hendrix. And it might sound underwhelming because a lot of what Jimi was doing on this record is commonplace now, but he was the first to do that stuff. When Are You Experienced came out, the electric guitar was still relatively new, but Jimi took it to a place where it had never been before and it would never be the same after. The solo from Red House perfectly encapsulates this. Let me play it for you, we'll break it down, and by the end of this video, you too will be a believer. Now, the blues lays the foundation for so much of what we do, and we just wrapped up a block on blues soloing over at the Samurai Guitar Dojo. See, over there we do weekly lessons designed to give you a clear path to improvement and the ability to break out of whatever rut you're stuck in. Every week I teach you a thing, give it to you to work on, you come back, and we build on top of that. We've been at this for a couple months now, and when you sign up, you gain access to the entire back catalog, and with weekly lessons, there's a whole lot more to come. I got a special promo today. Since this video is on soloing, if you use the link in the description, you're not only going to get in for $7.50 a month, but you're also going to get access to my course, The Craft of Soloing, which normally is $80, completely free. I'd love to see you over there. Anyways, let's get back to it. So one of the things that makes this solo so special is that it clearly marks a turning point in history. You have two eras colliding, and you can hear that in the music. We have Era 1, electric guitar pre-Hendrix, which starts with Charlie Christian, the first real guitar hero in the late 30s. He opens the door for this first wave of African-American electric bluesmen, guys like T-Bone Walker, Muddy Waters, B.B. King, Buddy Guy. You could even throw Chuck Berry into that group. This generation defines the vocabulary for what would become blues and rock guitar. You've probably heard something like this before. That's straight from that first wave of electric blues guys. But then in the early 1960s, something cool starts to happen in the UK. British teenagers get their hands on what are called race records. Blues, early rock, and R&B stuff from African Americans, and this music begins to spread. And you hear these young, white British blues bands start to pop up. The Rolling Stones started covering Elmore James stuff. The Beatles were covering Chuck Berry, John Mayall and the Blues Breakers, the Yardbirds. This music finds a new voice, and with it comes a bit of a shift. It gets faster, it gets heavier, it gets louder, but the music still very much sounds like that first wave of the blues, just more so. So while an early American bluesman might have played something like this, a British guy in the 60s might have approached that like this. And up until this point, things had followed a fairly natural musical evolution, but then Are You Experienced comes out, and instead of continuing that way, we go in a different direction. This trajectory no longer applies. And Jimi's solo on the blues tune Red House perfectly illustrates this. So in the solo, Jimi opens things up with a lick that's clearly derived from the history of the blues. Then check out what he plays next. Nobody had ever played with that kind of phrasing. It's coming from space. It's the same language, but a completely different accent. It's the blues. It sounds great over the blues, but no one had ever played the blues like that before. And it's so cool. Within the first two licks, you hear the history of electric guitar, and then you hear the future. Are there any other moments in recorded music like this? And then from there, Jimi leads into this repeated figure. And that on its own is pretty hip for the time. But at this point in the solo, he duplicates the guitar track, delays it, and then brings it in and out. And in 2024, it's kind of whatever. You can do that with a couple mouse clicks. But 1967, this is cutting edge. Maybe the Beatles had messed around with some of the studio stuff not long before, but Hendrix was the first guy to bring this to the electric guitar like this. And then we move on to the next part of the solo, and at this point, it's worthwhile doing a bit of a comparison. Here's how a first wave blues man might have improvised over the next couple bars. And a British kid like Eric Clapton in 67, he might have done something like this. But this is what Jimmy plays. You hear that, and it's a wrench in the musical bike spokes. Up until now, it's that linear progression of the blues guitar solo, and then you have Hendrix, who doesn't sound like a kid from Seattle. He sounds like a guitar alien from Mars who landed in the Mississippi Delta. And then to close out the solo, he goes closer to the roots of the blues, but he's still doing it with that outer space accent. And I'm sure Jimi Hendrix wasn't thinking about any of this stuff. He was a pure artist just trying to make the best thing he could. And from May 12, 1967, when RU Experience came out, the guitar world was forever changed. Pop culture became Hendrix obsessed. All guitarists wanted to do what Jimmy did. His debut album is a defining moment for our instrument. Because here's the thing, even if you're not that into Jimi Hendrix, your favorite guitar player probably was. And if not, then at least their favorite was. And of course, we got to talk about the tone. I've isolated the guitar part using Moise's AI. Take a quick listen. Hendrix is likely using a 1964 Strat into a Marshall Plexi through a fuzz face pedal. And this has kind of become the sound that we associate with rock and roll. But at the time, there's not a lot of comparables. I mean, maybe Jeff Beck with the Yardbirds in 1965. Or Clapton with Cream a few months earlier is probably the closest you get. In so many ways, everything about this is just truly groundbreaking stuff. This solo only scratches the surface of Jimi Hendrix's impact on electric guitar, but hearing his futuristic guitar work over top of a traditional blues, it's such a clear contrast of the past and what would become the future, and it still somehow sounds so good. If you were to summarize Jimi Hendrix's greatness in one solo, to me, this is clearly it. Ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. That's one of the greatest solos by the greatest guitar player. And remember, if you join us at the Samurai Guitar Dojo, using the link in the description, you're going to get in for $7.50 a month. As well, you're going to get my course, The Craft of Soloing, free as a welcome gift. You can find that brand new Sammy G merch over at shopsamuraiguitarist.com. And as always, thank you all for watching. Look after yourselves, look after each other, look after the planet. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I'll see you again soon.